Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's Jmann. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm Jmann.
This is Steiny.
Hi.
Discipline is lacking in schools. That's my position statement for this episode.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is from my own experiences, from what my kids tell me goes on in their classrooms, more often than not, one child will flip the fuck out, and then they'll have to remove all the other kids from the classroom while a counselor or somebody comes in and then tries to lasso this fucking calf and get him out to get into a safe room or a calm down room, and then immediately as soon as they're calm, put them back into class.
Oh. Well, this is surprising because my son hasn't really talked about any of these types of situations, so this might be unique to...
I'm going to keep digging a few more angles here that'll all end up one big fucking hole for a pool for us to swim in.
All right.
I forget who it was I was talking to. It was a friend of mine. His wife had a friend that's a teacher, and she said, and I quote, "Teaching is miserable now, not only because the parents think their kids are special and don't need to be disciplined, but because 15 minutes out of every hour that I am instructing, I'm losing it because of kids that are poorly behaved and shouldn't be in the regular kids' classes."
Sure.
So there used to be a lot of special ed classes. Mm-hmm. We'd keep those people separate. But because they don't want them to feel shitty and ostracized now, they want to include them. They stick these autistic kids that just can't hack it in a regular classroom setting because they get overstimulated and flip the fuck out. Mm-hmm. They send them into regular classes, and you're so worried about that one kid that's a problem that you don't want to take him out of class, that you are basically cutting off your nose to spite your face by sacrificing the education of every other well-behaved, adjusted child in that classroom.
True. I mean, but we always... Okay, so here's the other side of that. You always had class clowns in classes growing up, right? You always had somebody that was a distraction that would F around a bit and, you know, you'd laugh, get you to break the ice for a little bit or something like that. Now, granted, this sounds like it's something that's a lot more disruptive than a class clown ever was.
The class clown would crack jokes and kind of cause the teacher to take a moment to catch their breath.
Right.
Like, okay, what was I saying? Or maybe we'd all have a laugh and it would actually enrich the classroom experience.
Sometimes.
At no time did I ever have to be ushered out of my classroom because somebody got pissed off, flipped out, and threw a fucking chair across the room.
We had a couple kids that flipped out like that way back when, but yeah, that was usually like one of those moments where everybody's just like, what the F just happened, right? And now it sounds like this is normal. Yeah.
It's frequent, it's common, it's fucking bullshit. Yeah. And there's certain states that have policies where their Board of Education decided under no circumstance are you to remove the child from this classroom because you're going to interrupt and stymie their education.
But once again, the point you make, how do we put one kid's needs above all the needs of all the other kids in that room? I don't understand that.
If it's 20, if it's 25, if it's 30, God forbid, if it's 35 kids in one classroom, and you have one or two problem children, and you keep sending them back, and they keep distracting all the other kids, my kids have never been sent to the office. That pisses me off because they're stellar. They're top students.
Oh, I thought you said it was piss you off because you want them to...
No, it pisses me off that my kid's education is interrupted, and they come home and they're like, oh, this girl was pushing her desk over and trying to hit the teacher today. And it's like, why the fuck is that stupid cunt in your classroom? Why don't they send her to the fucking special kids class? Or around these parts, we have the Ann Bremmer Education Center.
Oh, okay.
It's for very special needs and behavioral problematic kids.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a term for that. But
it's a school full of them. And they have so many extra teachers and paras with specialty educations to handle this shit.
Are probably a lot smaller, so they can give a lot more individual and specialized attention to the kids.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good thing, then. Yeah,
it's everything from kids that are a little bit autistic or just have a shitty attitude to like clients I had that went there when I was a social worker who were super autistic.
Sure. Like debilitatingly autistic.
To the point there, once they age out of that education program, that special ed program,
really
they will go to a day program
Okay.
where the staffing to client numbers are not sustainable. Like, we don't know what to do with these. But I'm focused on those shitty kids that are so poorly behaved, not just because they're on the spectrum. I'm not ripping on those kids so much.
It's not their fault then.
No, but there are kids that aren't raised right, and their parents don't want their kid to be taken out of class or punished because they think they're being fucking singled out. Well, they should be, because they're the kid that's using their phone to make distracting noises. They're the one that's refusing to put the phone away. They're the one that's starting shit in class and yelling swear words at the teacher. Like, get them the fuck out. It used to be that the term cream of the crop had some fucking integrity to it because you strived to be the best, not just to survive. You wanted to thrive. Yeah. And we don't have that anymore. It's everybody's the same. You're fucking not. There's a reason that the NBA doesn't have, there's 30 teams times 15 people per team. That's 450 players, right? Okay, there's not 450 LeBron Jameses in the NBA. There's a lot of guys that are middling, that barely made it out of college, some that got drafted in the second round, some that didn't get drafted and made it through the G League, like recent slam dunk champion Mac McClung.
Yep.
Not everybody's a fucking all-star. And that's why you need to take those kids and put them with somebody that can handle them, that can educate them to the same material in a way that is not distracting to all the other kids. Get them the fuck out. Keep the ones that can handle it with the teacher, because you're making the teacher's job infinitely more difficult, and it's causing ripple effects in their ability to keep positions filled or hire new teachers.
Oh my gosh.
The burnout rate is ungodly. Yeah. Just get them out of there and fucking handle them so that we can prepare them to do the less desirable jobs in this country, because frankly, we need them to do that.
Yeah. It's interesting, and now I'm going to sound like a back in my day kind of person here with this statement, but it really was a thing where, and I don't know when the mindset changed or the mentality changed. It used to be a thing where you were effing around in class, right? And if you had to go to the office, they called your parents up, and your parents would come and they would lay into you because they believed the teacher, they believed the system, they believed that, yeah, I know my kid, he probably was effing off and being a distraction and being a problem, and we need to discipline him at home. He's going to be grounded, whatever.
Before smartphones and the internet.
Right. Whatever. Well, I mean, back then there was Nintendo, there was, Super Nintendo, all this other stuff, right?
Video games, TVs, musical instruments, all kinds of shit.
All sorts of shit that you could be grounded from, right? And that was the weapon, right? That would help keep you in line. Nowadays, everybody's defending their kid. Like you said, it goes back to the princes and princess age here of the last 15 to 20 years, where everybody's kids is unique and special and is a unicorn, right? And so their kid couldn't possibly be the one causing problems. It's somebody else's kids, or it's this teacher. This teacher's a piece of crap, whatever. And it's not the case, right? It's the parent's mindset is completely flipped in the last, say, 30 years about disciplining children, about their own
because the parents
kids.
Came from a generation where they stopped getting spankings and started getting timeouts, and everybody needed to share and include everybody. And that's when the positivity wave started, when the Gen Xers were parenting the millennials, and the millennials are having these Gen A kids who can't fucking cope. So you've got the blind leading the blind. And yeah, the teachers are getting fucking hammered, and they're like, fuck this. I can go make just as much money being a cashier at Hy-Vee.
Well, yeah.
Which is sad.
And how many years have you heard stories about teachers having to spend their own money to buy supplies for classrooms? Stuff like that. Why would you ever want to do it? But yet, we supposedly respect them so much. They're one of our most coveted and, precious resources because they're teaching our children. Why would we not teach or treat teachers better? Right?
Well, what you said about the parents taking the kid's side.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, here's the thing. If my kid is a piece of shit and acts out at home, it lends itself to reason that if they go to school where I'm not there to watch them, they're going to be an even bigger piece of shit.
Right.
And when the school calls me and says, hey, your kid's a piece of shit, I'm going to go, you know what? That tracks.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen that before. How fucking dare you?
Yeah, and why is that? Why? I don't understand this.
Because they feel like I'm failing as a parent. They're getting defensive because they're taking it personally. Children have an underdeveloped sense of propriety. That's why they misbehave. They haven't bought into the rules and societal mores. They want to do what they want to do, especially teenagers.
They are all little Trumps. All they ever do is think about themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. They're self-centered idiots is what kids are, and that's not being mean. They don't know anything, and all they think about is themselves and how it affects them, right?
Especially these kids that come from broken families, and it's only one kid.
What do you mean?
Well, in your instance, right? I'm not saying your son specifically, but there are plenty of little boys out there who come from a situation like yours. Your son is very grounded. He's very well balanced.
He's always been that way.
He somehow, in spite of any tumult, he learned to cope. He's got a good head on his shoulders. There's so many that don't, and let's say dad fucked up, and he feels guilty for the divorce.
Oh, so then he doesn't.
So then he overcompensates by giving the kid everything he wants, and the kid's like, this is fucking awesome. I can do whatever I want. My dad feels like such a piece of shit for breaking the family up that it doesn't matter what I do.
I can get whatever I want, yeah.
Or the mom left the dad because she thought that she was better than the dad, when she fucking wasn't. And she's out there just fucking jumping from cock to cock like it's a game of musical peignoirs. And the kid's like, wow, my mom's so distracted by trying to find a man to fill that void in her heart and between her legs that she doesn't pay attention to me, and I can do whatever I want.
Yep.
So these fucking emotionally maladapted and psychologically broken sociopaths with a computer in their hand 24/7 and the ability to get whatever they want and learn way too much, way too fast.
That's been my thing for the last 15 to 20 years is, there's always been a progression. Our generation was exposed to shit a lot earlier than the generation before us and before them and all that stuff. And it's like, at least in my time, there was still this idea of sexiness and sultriness and everything wasn't so like in your face. And for like the last couple decades, the internet has put everything in your face.
All the porn's right there.
I don't
even have to try to go out and meet an Asian woman who will show me her tits. I can just Google
you don't need to do a
amateur
ad
Asian tits, and it's right there.
Yeah.
I've talked about this in my comedy specials. I like to look at Asian tits. I will Google amateur Asian tits, and I will sit there for 10 minutes looking at all the dozens of different free tits to see.
Well, and what's interesting is about the internet now, too, is we've got, 28 years now of porn? You've got quite the library, so you can actually go and surf for quite a bit of time and not run into repeats, right? I mean, if you really want to,
It's not even like finding your dad's old fucking Playboys.
Right, and having to look at the same mag.
Like in the movie Step Brothers, where he's like, oh, I got a pretty good collection of Playboys from like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, or Hustlers. It's kind of like masturbating in a time machine. Like, all the fucking porn is like recent porn.
Yeah.
It was made last week in somebody's garage when a guy drove up to a homeless girl, offered her a sandwich and a place to stay, told her what a nice guy he was for letting her sleep in his garage, and next thing you know, he's making a video where she's knobbing him off.
Right.
And I know that's a really specific example, but that's because it's a video I watched like 3 weeks ago.
There you go. See? And
the kids have access to this, and they're just like, basically, they're trying to be grown-ups when they're not ready. They're told they have all this individuality and bodily autonomy and the ability to advocate for themselves. We're telling them, you can do whatever you want, and then they go to school and they act like shit, and it's like, you're not fucking special. You're just a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And then the teacher's like, oh my God, why are we doing this? And the admin's like, hey now, let's not make little Billy feel bad.
We can't pull him out of class if he's being disruptive.
Because that'll fuck up the whole tract of his learning here. He'll get left behind, and we wouldn't want a shitty kid to have to repeat a grade.
The thing is even when I was in school, you knew there were just some kids that were going to be shitty kids, right? They were going to be shitty all throughout middle school. They were going to be shitty all throughout high school, and they were going to barely graduate, or the system would just push them through, and then they were going to go be a shitty adult, right? Maybe Billy is still just that shitty kid, right? There may now be not much hope for Billy. Like, I mean, I get it. That's not the PC thing to say in this day and age where everybody deserves a chance. But I remember there being just jerks out there, right?
Yeah.
There are just some people that they're not redeemable. Why?
They like to start fights. They like to run their mouth. They like to put other people down. When they got off of school, they go hang out with their friends because their parents were split up.
Exactly.
And their mom was at work, and they're at Kmart stealing.
They were the ones drinking.
I'm dating myself with this reference, but that's what happened is they're fucking left alone with too much freedom.
See? Yep.
And you're just amplifying the shittiness of their personality with poor coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
And bad influences. And now it's just like, the parents are the bad influence because they're encouraging their child to stand up for themselves even when they're fucking wrong. Yeah. Which then leads to adults who don't want to be told anything that goes against what they already believe or want to hear, so they can't handle it. So then it has this domino effect upwards of the generations, and then you get to a certain point where I want to say it starts with like very old millennials or young Gen X, or as we like to say, the Xennial micro generation in between.
Okay.
That is the threshold where we start going, no, motherfucker, that's not what works. That's not how you do this. You don't get to have dessert just because you want dessert and we have a pie here. You didn't finish your fucking dinner. Go to your room, fuck off.
Right. You didn't do the chores that were laid out before you. Why should you get anything?
Or every time you go to the store, you get a treat. It's fucking retarded. No. That's why the word treat is used to define what it is you're getting. It's supposed to be a special occurrence.
Not every time. It's not dessert. We didn't call this dessert.
So I'm not saying we need to go back to like corporal punishment, although I would not be completely against some kid that calls a teacher a horrible name and that teacher just fucking like gives him a bass rootin' palm strike to the face and puts him on his ass. Because that kid needs to learn a lesson. There's plenty of kids out there that think they're hot shit when they're not. And they think it's funny to fuck around. Yeah. They haven't had their ass beat like they deserve to reground them. So they're like, oh shit, that's not okay. I was, as the kids put it, acting out of pocket.
In 6th grade, I remember I thought I was funny, and I was funny. I had a lot of friends, but I mouthed off to somebody in gym class and proceeded to get my ass beat when we were all changing our clothes after. And this was 6th grade, so this was kind of in the first time when you actually have a locker room that you go and change into actual like
what a weird
gym
time
stuff.
To start a fight.
Yeah,
I can see your pubes. I'm gonna kick your ass.
It was something. We were playing basketball or something like that, and just saying some crap back and forth. And then we get in the locker room, and he was like, "You want to continue to say stuff?" And I said something, and next thing you know, ended up fighting. And I learned early on not to open up my mouth because you just don't know what somebody's going to react and say. Right?
You made him sound like a very polite bully there. Oh, would you like to continue to say those things you were saying to me out on the basketball court? Like, you want to keep talking that shit, bitch?
It was probably a little bit more in your face and over the top of me because obviously I was short even back then. And what's funny is we did the typical thing that you did back then where you're fighting, and then the like in this case it was the fight teacher comes in to break it up and it was like, who started it? And we're like, no, we're just messing around. We're just wrestling. You act like your friends.
As you're all red under one eye and his knuckles are all fucking red too.
Well, and because neither one of you told on each other, you got this weird kind of bromance out of it afterward. Like we were like kind of buddies after
That's
that.
a guy thing.
Yeah.
You fight, you get the ugliness out of the way. You're like, oh, fuck, I guess we're both shitheads the same way. Well, let's hang out now.
Well, and you both avoided getting in trouble together, so you kind of have that bond too. So, but yeah. But either way, but the point of my story is everybody...
Consequences.
Everybody reacts to stimuli differently, right? Some people, the threat of the whip actually works, right? Mm-hmm. The threat of physical violence, that is enough to keep them in line. Other people, it's mental intimidation or some type of guilt. You know what I mean? Like we all have these different ways that we react. And to continue to think that we can't have some type of punishment because it goes against one of these or the other is not okay either, because not everybody reacts to, well, let's just put them in timeout. Let's just give them some minutes. Some kids will just get more wound up. They'll get more,
like, ha ha, pussy, you're not going to do anything to me. And that's what's missing in schools is the respect for authority, because the parents don't have the teachers back.
Yeah.
So there's no consequences, so they have nothing to fear. So they're just like, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want.
If they know that their parent is going to come in and get mad at the teacher and defend them, as opposed to actually discipline them or get mad at them for acting out in class, hell yeah, they're going to do it every time.
That's like giving a dog a treat when he bites somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just like my youngest is 3. I'm going to be dealing with this shit for another 15 fucking years. Yeah. I don't foresee it going any way backwards towards discipline and the kids respecting the teacher and the parents being less of a self-important asshat who's way too condescending towards the actual teacher, not the shitty kid.
Right.
It's a problem that needs to be solved on a societal level. And it's like the Secretary of Education needs to be the one to advocate this. Like, hey, stop ripping on the teachers. They're basically raising your kids for you, and you're sending them into the classroom as stubborn, self-important dickheads who don't know how to behave or respect an authority figure.
I think a lot of them should have a video played of like, okay, remember what it was like when you were in class as a kid and how it was, and a few disruptions here and there. Now look what it is today, right? Because I think a lot of them don't have insight as to really how tough it is in today's classrooms.
Well, and this is many months ago, probably a year at least, where a mutual friend of ours, former coworker, had a video on Facebook, and the video was audio that somebody recorded in a classroom of a teacher screaming at a kid, who the story was the kid showed up 10 minutes late and was disruptive and laughed about being late, and he's chronically and habitually doing this.
So,
and our mutual coworker was like, if they did that to my kid, I'd fucking chew that teacher's ass out. And I came at it with the stern respect for teacher angle, like, these kids don't fear consequences. They come in and they're disrupting the education of all the other kids. The teacher's job is hard enough. So if that kid acts like a piece of shit and it's my kid and the teacher lights him up like that, I'm going to call the teacher to say, I appreciate you keeping them in line. I'm not going to go, how fucking dare you? Guess what? Nobody responded to that comment, especially not our former coworker.
Really? No,
yeah, didn't have shit to say. Because I was basically saying it's these parents that don't fucking teach their kids to respect authority and these shitty kids that think they're untouchable. That's the problem, not the teacher that lost his cool.
If it had come out and that was my kid getting dressed down like that, I mean, granted, I'd have to know the context. If the teacher's calling my kid a bunch of names and being derogatory, that's different, right? But if my kid was being disruptive, I would be embarrassed, and I would go to that teacher and tell them that this would not be a problem ever again. I will talk to him. I will talk to my kid. We will address this. This won't be a problem. If it is, you talk to me directly again, and we'll go from there. You know what I mean? And that's what parenting takes. It takes involvement, not just expecting I can put them on the bus, somebody else is going to raise them and teach them, and then I get to do hardly anything. Like, that's not how parenting works.
That's not how school works. The teacher's there to give them the tools to kind of turn on the light bulbs so that when they get out in the world, they can function. They're not supposed to be like, here's your already baked and frosted birthday cake, blow out the candles. Right. No, they're supposed to say, hey, I've given them the tools, encourage, do your fucking job.
Right. We're not sending our kids to a boarding school or, some type of prep school.
Oh, God. That's a whole nother fucking animal right there.
Yeah. All the private schools that have been popping up lately and want public funding. Well, that's a different argument.
The charters.
Conversations, yes.
Yeah, fuck them too. Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It? That is at What Do We Call It? You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/What Do We Call It podcast show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm Jmann.
This is Steiny.
And that's the end.